I'm Hannah. I'm 33 years old. And on my parents' 40th anniversary, my mother shoved my daughter's gift across a table in front of 60 people and called me her biggest mistake. The cream-colored box had a navy ribbon that my 8-year-old Lily had tied that morning with the kind of focus children bring to things that matter. Inside was a card sheet drawn, 2 stick figures holding hands under wobbly hearts. Happy 40 years, Grandma and Grandpa. Her best cursive, leaning hard to the left like it was trying to escape the page. She carried it across the banquet hall, like she was carrying something that weighed more than physics should allow. The room quieted the way rooms do when they sense something important is about to happen. The kind of quiet that has weight. Lily stopped in front of my mother and held out the box with both hands. Happy anniversary, Grandma and Grandpa. We made it just for you. My mother didn't open it. She didn't smile. She looked at the box like it might bite her. Then she looked at Lily. Then she looked at me, standing 3 feet back with my blazer pressed and my hands folded and nothing in my expression to suggest I was about to watch my worst fear come true in front of a white tablecloth audience. My mother put her palm flat against the cream paper and shoved it sideways across the table. Hard. Not gently. Not politely. The navy ribbon snagged on a fork. Lily's card fluttered to the floor, face down next to my mother's chair. Lily's hand stayed open. Empty. My mother didn't look at the card. She looked at me and said it loud enough for the second row of tables to hear without leaning. You were always my biggest mistake. Not under her breath. Not the way you say cruel things when you think no one's listening. This was public. This was deliberate. This was a woman spending 40 years of resentment in one sentence, and she didn't even have to raise her voice. My father stood up. For 1 second, one held stupid, desperate second, I thought he was going to correct her. I thought maybe for the first time in my life he might choose me. He didn't. Take it and get out. The same tone he used to tell the dog to leave the couch. Practiced. Flat. Like he'd rehearsed it in the shower that morning. A fork dropped somewhere to the left. A woman put her hand over her mouth. Lily pressed her face into my hip. And I laughed. Not performance. Not revenge. Just the sound a person makes when the thing they feared their whole life finally arrives and turns out to be smaller than they imagined. I didn't know yet that I held their house in my hands. I didn't know yet that my father's strange phone call 3 weeks earlier, a casual question about what a house like theirs was worth, had led me down a path that would change everything. I didn't know yet that in 7 hours, I was going to walk that entire room through the reason my parents had gambled their home on my brother's dream, and lose. But Lily knew something. Kids always do. She just held on to me the way you hold on when you realize the adults have failed and the only safe thing in the room is the person carrying you. The whole thing started 3 weeks before the party. I was a title attorney in Richmond. Commercial closings mostly. Property transfers worth more than every house on my parents' street combined. I was good at reading files, at finding problems hidden in small print, at knowing when something didn't add up. It was the same skill that made me terrible at family dinners. Once you learn to read between lines, you can't stop doing it with people you love. That Tuesday, a file landed on my desk that made my hands go still. My firm pulled the weekly foreclosure docket every week. Public record. Usually I skimmed it between coffee and my first closing. That Tuesday, one address punched me in the sternum. 1847 Birchwood Lane. My parents' house. I read it 3 times. Pulled the full notice of trustee's sale. The address was there. The default amount was there. The sale date was there. June 20th. 41 days away. I sat back in my chair and did the math the way I'd been trained to do it. No emotion, just numbers. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit 14 months ago. $187,000. Against a house that had been paid off for years. The house that was supposed to be their solid thing, their one asset heading into retirement. The money had dispersed as a lump sum to an account I didn't recognize. I pulled the business filings. Dated 13 months ago. A restaurant LLC. Registered agent. Derek R. Jagger. My brother. Derek's restaurant had been called Fork and Field. Farm Totable concept. Downtown location. He'd posted the grand opening on Facebook with a champagne toast and a caption that said "Dreams don't wait." My mother had shared it 11 times. The health department flagged violations in month 3. Yelp reviews mentioned undercooked chicken and a hostess who was visibly annoyed. By month 5, the landlord filed for unpaid rent. Derek shut the doors and deleted the Instagram. My parents had bet their retirement on Derek's dream kitchen, and the dream had burned down. They'd lost the house before I even knew the house was at risk. I closed the file, opened it again, closed it. My father had never called me before. Not directly, not without running it through my mother first. And now I understood what he'd been asking. He was terrified. He needed to know the math without having to say the real words. Without having to tell me that my brother had failed and they'd failed him by funding the failure. And now they were about to lose everything. They hadn't called to ask for help. They would rather lose the house than ask me. I sat with that for a long time. The rational part of me, the part that passed the bar, that survived single motherhood on ramen, that stopped expecting birthday calls, that part said walk away. They didn't ask. They don't want you. 33 years of evidence suggests you should protect yourself and let the math resolve naturally. But there was another part. The part that remembered my grandmother in the back bedroom of that house, braiding my hair before school. The roses she planted along the fence that still bloomed every May. The kitchen tile she'd picked out decades ago when she was alive, and someone in that family had made me feel like I belonged there. The house wasn't just my parents'. It was hers. I didn't do this for them. I did it because the house was worth saving, even if the people inside it weren't sure I was. And because I'd never explained to Lily 15 years from now that I had the power to keep her grandparents home. And I let it go because my feelings were hurt. But I wouldn't save them on their terms. If I did this, it would be on mine. I spent 2 weeks negotiating with the lender. Clean transaction. Legal. The defaulted note could be sold, and I had the resources to buy it. Not the full amount plus fees. A discounted figure they'd accept to close the file. I wired most of my savings. 7 years of closings and bonuses and skipped vacations. But it was my money earned my way. The assignment was recorded at the county recorder's office. As of 3 weeks before the party, I held the note. Their crisis was sitting in my briefcase. I drafted the documents slowly. The recorded assignment of note. A satisfaction of note that would cancel the debt when I signed and recorded it. And underneath, the original notice of trustee's sale. June 20th circled in red. 3 pieces of paper that told one story. Your house was dying. Your daughter bought it back. Here's the release. I decided the 40th anniversary was the moment. Not a phone call. Not a certified letter. I wanted to hand it to them in front of the people who mattered to them, the family, the church friends, the neighbors, so that for once the story they told about me and the truth would be the same story told in the same room at the same time. I slid the manila envelope into the cream-colored box. The satisfaction of note went inside and signed. I'd sign it at the party in front of everyone. The final moment. The proof that I could and they couldn't stop me. That evening, I sat Lily down at the kitchen table. We're bringing the most important present they'll ever get, I told her. She studied me with those serious brown eyes. More important than the earrings Derek got Grandma for Christmas? Way more. She untied the navy ribbon, retied it with the concentration of a surgeon. The bow was still lopsided. She didn't care. She tucked her handwritten card under the ribbon, so it wouldn't slide off during the drive. There, she announced. Now it's perfect. I watched her smooth the cream paper with her thumb. This tiny person who loved people who hadn't earned it yet. And I felt the full weight of what I was about to do. The cream box on the passenger seat between us. The navy ribbon. The deed to a house she barely knew she was about to inherit. The morning of the party, I pulled into the parking lot of the banquet hall. Lily smoothed her dress in the mirror. Blue cotton. Her favorite. She'd picked it because Grandma likes blue. Ready? I held the cream box in my lap. She reached over and straightened the navy ribbon, which had shifted during the drive. Her card peeked out from under the bow. I carried the box. Lily held my free hand. We walked through the side entrance, past the catering trays and the DJ setting up in the corner and 40 years of curated mythology. The room smelled like shrimp cocktail and competing perfumes. White tablecloths. Rented centerpieces. A gold foil banner that said 40 years. 60 people. Some of them had watched me grow up. Some of them had believed every word my mother's sister Carol had whispered about me. Some of them were about to watch everything change. Lily's hand tightened in mine. She could feel it. The weight of the room. The way people look at you when they don't quite know if you belong. I squeezed back. "We're okay," I whispered. I didn't tell her what was about to happen. I didn't tell her that in 1 hour everything she'd been hoping for. A grandma who looked happy to see her. A family that made room at the table. Was going to explode in front of everyone. I didn't tell her that sometimes love means doing something people will hate you for. I didn't tell her that I was about to choose myself and there was no taking it back. The afternoon stretched ahead of us. The appetizer course. The toasts. The moment when my mother would look at that box and make a choice that would answer every question I'd ever had about my place in this family. I set the cream box on the empty chair beside me and waited for the moment to come. The room had gone silent the way rooms do when they've just witnessed cruelty dressed up as honesty. My mother's words hung in the air between us. "You were always my biggest mistake." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I'd spent 33 years terrified of exactly this moment. And now that it was here, it was so much smaller than I'd imagined. So much more honest. She was finally telling me the truth. She didn't want me here. She didn't want my help. She wanted me to disappear and take my inconvenient love with me. My mother's composure cracked. She hadn't expected laughter. She'd prepared for tears or silence or the door. The same 3 responses I'd given her for 3 decades. Laughter wasn't in her playbook. "What's so funny?" she snapped. I stopped laughing, took a breath, looked at my father slumped in his chair, then at my mother with her hands gripped tight on the table edge, then at the cream box sitting crooked on the white tablecloth with the navy ribbon half undone. "Do you want to know what's in the box?" The room leaned forward. Even Aunt Carol stopped mid-sip of champagne. I picked up the box and pulled out the manila envelope. 3 weeks ago, I found out that this house, your house, the one on Birchwood Lane where my grandmother planted roses that are still blooming along the fence, is in foreclosure. My mother's face went white. My father sat down heavily like his legs had been cut. 14 months ago, you took out a $187,000 line of credit against it. You used the money to fund Derek's restaurant. I looked at my brother. He stared at the tablecloth like it contained instructions for how to disappear. Fork and Field lasted 19 weeks. The health department flagged violations. The landlord filed for unpaid rent. Derek shut the doors and never repaid a single cent of the startup capital. The startup capital that came from your house. The room was absolutely still. No one reached for food. No one moved. You missed 4 payments. The lender filed a notice of default in January. The house is scheduled to be sold at auction on June 20th. That's 41 days from tonight. I held up the manila envelope so the room could see it clearly. 3 weeks ago, I bought the note from the lender. I negotiated a discount and paid it off with my savings. 7 years of working nights and weekends while my mother told her sister I was the daughter who abandoned her. 7 years of skipped vacations and bonuses I put away for my daughter's future. All of it. I wiped out my savings to buy the thing that was going to destroy you. I set the envelope on the table between the pushed-aside box and the 3-tier cake with fondant roses. This envelope contains the recorded assignment of your note to me, and a satisfaction of note I prepared. Once I sign and record it, the house is yours. Free and clear. No auction. No foreclosure. It was your anniversary gift. I let that land in the silence. My 8-year-old carried it across this room for you, and you shoved it off the table and called her mother your biggest mistake. Carol turned the color of raw chicken. The pastor's wife covered her face with both hands. My Uncle Pete, my father's younger brother, was nodding slowly. The kind of nod people do when they've been waiting a long time for a truth to come out. My mother's mouth moved. Hannah, you can't. You can't just. I said quietly. I hold the note. Your house, your debt, my decision. I pulled the satisfaction of note from my blazer pocket. The document I'd planned to sign at that table. The final flourish that would have made their house safe. I folded it and put it back. And signed. Then I bent down and picked up Lily's card from the floor. The stick figures were smudged where someone had stepped on them. The hearts were still there. Still wobbly. Still drawn with care by a child who believed in grandparents who didn't deserve her. I tucked the card into my jacket. Then I picked up my daughter. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my collar. She didn't cry. Kids don't always cry when the world breaks. Sometimes they just hold on to the safest person in the room and wait for it to be over. Hannah. My father's voice cracked on the second syllable. Hannah, wait. I didn't wait. Hannah, please. My mother stood up so fast her chair hit the wall. You can't just. That's our house. I turned at the door. 60 faces. Some stunned. Some relieved. Some crying. Derek had his head in his hands. It was your gift, I said. It would have been signed tonight. You chose differently. I walked out. The parking lot was dark and quiet. The bass from the DJ's speakers thumped through the walls. Lily's breath was warm against my neck. We got in the car. I buckled her in, smoothed her hair back from her forehead. The cream box sat on the passenger seat, the navy ribbon creased and half untied. Wrecked from being pushed and pulled across a table by a woman who couldn't stand the idea of being saved by the daughter she'd spent 40 years rejecting. Mom, Lily whispered. Is Grandma going to be okay? I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Grandma's going to have to figure some things out, I said. Neither of us spoke the rest of the drive home. Lily fell asleep with her head against the window. I drove with my hands at 10 and 2, exactly where they should be, exactly where I'd learned to keep control a long time ago. The calls started that night. My mother's voicemail at 10:47 p.m. crying, but the kind of crying that still had structure. Still had an agenda. Hannah, you humiliated us in front of everyone. In front of the church. My father's voicemail the next morning. Anger first, then something that sounded almost broken. We were wrong. Kay, we were wrong. Please come back. We need to talk about the house. Derek didn't leave a voicemail. Just texted 3 words. Fix this, Hannah. I didn't answer. Not yet. They needed to sit in it, not as punishment. As preparation. I had something to offer, but this time it would come with terms. On day 6, I called my father. Just him. I'm not going to make you homeless, I said. That was never the plan and it's not who I am. What do you want? He asked. I told him about the trust I'd drafted. Clean and simple. I'd sign the satisfaction of note, release the lien, cancel every dollar of debt. In exchange, they'd place the house in a life estate trust. The house would be theirs for as long as they lived. When both of them passed, it would go to Lily, their granddaughter. The one my mother hadn't looked at once during the party. Derek's name appeared nowhere in the documents. My father agreed in 30 seconds. My mother took 2 days. When she finally called, her voice was different. Smaller. She said one thing I hadn't expected. I was afraid of you, Hannah. Afraid you'd turn out to be everything I wasn't. And you did. And I couldn't stand it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. It was a woman standing at the edge of her own damage, looking down, describing what she saw. I didn't forgive her, but I hurt her. The documents were signed on a Tuesday, notarized, recorded. The house stayed on Birchwood Lane. My grandmother's roses kept blooming along the fence every May. The lien was released. The debt was canceled. My parents would die in that house, and then it would belong to my daughter. Lily's card, the stick figures, the wobbly hearts. I framed it and hung it in our hallway at home. My kids' drawings don't get wasted on people who won't keep them. I stopped waiting for my mother to call me anything but a mistake the day I realized my worth was never hers to hand back. She'd spent 40 years deciding who I was supposed to be. I spent one night deciding who I actually was. And it wasn't her biggest mistake. It was her greatest loss. I walked into that party carrying a house in a cream-colored box. I walked out knowing I didn't need them to survive. That was the real gift. Not the deed. The clarity. My daughter learned that night that love isn't always returned, but it doesn't have to be. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. That being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's permission to become something they never saw coming. If someone made you feel like the family mistake, hear me. You're not. You're just in a family that couldn't see what you were worth. And one day you'll stop waiting for them to figure it out. And that's when everything changes.